Welcome to the first of the lectures for the Cross-Platform Journalism and Content course for 2014 at Napier University. I'm Craig McGill and you can find me through the Napier email system, but you can also find me on Twitter at Craig McGill. There will also be a Twitter stream to supplement the course material, and that's at Main Journalism, and that will not only retweet material from yourselves, it will also be used to post links that may be informative and useful. And while this course only runs for a couple of months, the Main Journalism Twitter account posts material throughout the year. So with that, shall we get started? We are constantly wondering why does journalism need to change? For decades, if not centuries, print has been a very good, tried, tested and trusted format. Television and radio have come along, but print has still survived as well. And that between the three formats, everything seemed okay. But if you have a look at this is the circulation figures for the tail end of last year, 2013, and even taking into account the fact that in December, as in December 2012, people don't buy a lot of newspapers because of holidays and so on. These drops are still quite bad, and even more so when you actually look and just consider not the drops, but just what the circulations are. If you look at the Daily Mirror, for example, less than 1 million people, and if you take into account the old statistic about every newspaper being read by 3 people, that's 3 million people being reached in a country of over 60 million. Equally, if you even look at the Mail on Sunday or the Sun on Sunday, you're still not reaching even 10% of the population. So clearly, people still need news. Clearly, as journalists, we have a moral responsibility to provide the latest, up-to-date, most accurate news we can. So there must be a place where people are either getting information or places where journalists can go to make sure that people are getting information. And people do want information. The question here is, do they still want news as we know it? Because if you look at this slide carried out by Flurry at the tail end of last year, the issue here is that news and magazine apps are at the bottom. Only 31% are going for that, whereas games, lifestyle apps, music, media and entertainment are all higher up, and all considerably higher up. Yet, if you look at the top, there's hope here, because the top apps, the top growth is messaging and social. And messaging and social are very much microbursts of information. What someone was doing at work, what sort of day someone was having, what they saw. But consider this. Every one of those little pieces of information is news. What someone did for breakfast, how someone got to work, if they saw problems on the road, if their local work is closed, if their school is closed. Those little pieces of information are news. It's just not news in the grander scale that we know of it, or as we think of it. But the point to consider here is that, yes, people want news, but perhaps more than ever they just want news that's relevant to them and of interest to them specifically. And that's one of the challenges we face in this second decade of the 21st century. But the point being, news does change. So we shouldn't be panicked. We shouldn't be all doom and gloom and saying the industry is in decline. Media has changed throughout the years, from hieroglyphics in the Egyptian era, newspapers, books, radio, TV, internet. The thing you see from that is change is the only constant. And the trick as professional writers and news gatherers is to make sure that you can use all the tools, not only for gathering your news, but also for sharing your news and making sure it's seen by as wide an audience as possible. And again, it's something that we don't realise because it's a very subtle change, but newspapers change. Compare and contrast, for example, the British American and the Daily Mirror. There's at least 100 years between these publications, and as you can see, a lot more visual, a lot more colourful, a lot less reliance on text. The actual writing style as well will be a lot tighter in the Mirror than it is in the British American. And so the news constantly evolves. Just as video has evolved, just as photography has evolved, the text, the format, everything used in a news gathering operation has evolved. And how people get their news is changing. Google, Facebook, sites like Slashdot and Reddit, these are sites where people go for information. I mean, in essence, sites like Slashdot and Reddit are nothing more than taking content from elsewhere and putting it in front of an audience. And this effect can be so powerful that many a site has now been called Slashdotted when the server it's hosted on has gone under due to the volume of traffic that Slashdot has sent to it. Equally, Facebook has been an incredible driver of traffic for the likes of The Guardian and The Independent. They've found reading rates going huge in the hundreds of percent rise. So these places are worth considering. We can't just go, oh no, we're just in print and that's enough. Or a slightly more modern thinking of that, oh no, we're in print and we have our own website. That's no longer good enough. In truth, it never was. You can't just expect people to always come to you. And a comparison here is the newspaper vendor that you still see in the streets of Glasgow, Edinburgh, and elsewhere. These are people who are seeding the content. Yes, you're paying for it when you give them money, but they're out in the streets. You're not having to go to where the newspaper was printed or where the newspaper was published to get it. You're going to somewhere a lot more local. And news on the internet is an even more local way of getting that information. So consider it like that. It's something that evolves, it changes. We have to make sure people see the news where they are. And as I've said, the style of news is changing, and we'll look at this over the course. One of the more famous examples of late was the snowfall story by the New York Times, which is now dubbed, there's now the whole movement of the snowfall style, where there's a great combination of text, audio, video. It's just a great multimedia model and very time consuming, but very, very beautiful to read, very beautiful to look at, and very, very engaging. Equally, the BBC have now been bringing in interactive guides to topics. Again, not just text, not just video, not just audio. It's a combination of them all, and it's a lot of great material. This is the sort of thing that you see the potential of the web and what it was created for. This idea of the links coming together in one cohesive package from across the globe to give you phenomenal information. But it's not just information curated from elsewhere, it's information backed up, and in this case very much, at least half created exclusively for it, created by the BBC. So there's a need there for good expert professionals who can find content, find the relevant stories and write it and present it in a very good and relevant way. The BBC's also pioneered going onto Instagram with 10-15 second videos, but not just giving you it as a video, because if you're at work and you want the news and you're not allowed audio, that's a bit of a problem. It includes text on the video images as well. It's a fantastic little quick tool for getting news out to people. Equally, the Daily Mail. In the UK, this was one of the last, if not the last, main paper to go online, but is now one of the most profitable. And their way of telling stories is not a way you would see it in print. It's not a way you would ever have considered the Daily Mail or other news organisations doing, but it works. And it works because they've seen this work elsewhere and they've adapted it to their own ends. If you are in a rush, you could click on a link that brings you to this story, or just look at the story, and the headline gives you all the detail. You know, that more or less summarises all you need to know. If you've got time for a little bit more information, then there's the bullet points under it. There's 6 bullet points that sum it up quite nicely, and from there you really do have the whole story. Again, for those wanting a more traditional news style or expecting even more detail, the traditional story is there in what you would now call under the fold in an online page. So, you know, there's a lot there to take in, and even a couple of years ago, people would have said, oh, that's too much, or that's all wrong. But now, this is the current style, this is the current trend. We live in an age where, in theory, we've never been better off. Radiators, indoor plumbing, the internet, video streamed from across the globe. We see things as they happen, but attention spans are shorter. We're very much, as the saying goes, cash rich but time poor. So this works to that idea. You can read it quickly and get the basic story, or you can read in depth and get a little bit more. Another style that's gone down well of late is the Buzzfeed model, which you may just have a group of pictures and one line of text to accompany them. And again, we'll look at this more as the course develops, and it's been something that again works for an online audience that doesn't want to read huge 700, 800, 1000 word blog posts that just appear as paragraph after paragraph after paragraph. And another style of late that's more to attract your eye, it's not a writing style of a news story as such, is the idea of the upworthy headline, which normally takes just 2 to 3 sentences, pulls them together, and it gives you a hint of a story, but it's vague enough to make you want to try and click through, and it also tries to work on an emotional angle. For example, he lost weight eating McDonald's for 3 months. The story doesn't end there. That's a psychological hook for you to click on the link just to go, well, what happened next? What's the next part in the story? Equally, right before dying from a rare disease, Sam revealed his 3 secrets to happiness. What was the disease? How old was Sam? What were the 3 secrets to happiness? These are all questions prompted just by that one tweet. So it's goading you, it's gaming you into clicking that to see the information. And again, it's not just one platform. There's multiple platforms at a global level that are incredibly popular. As you can see here, Facebook, Twitter, incredibly popular across the globe. Lesser so to Google, YouTube, Instagram, LinkedIn and so on, but these all have a role to play in the storytelling process. They also have a role to play in the story gathering process. I mean, one thing a lot of people forget is that not only is YouTube a very popular video site, it's the world's 2nd largest search engine and also the world's 3rd or 4th largest online community. Great debate can be sparked around a video story and in the comments section under it. And again, these are things worth bearing in mind if you use video in your career. This is just giving you another breakdown of who uses the platforms. And we're slowly but surely seeing an acceptance of this idea that it's not all about kids and teenagers. People of all ages are using platforms. Perhaps some are using it more than others, but every generation is there now. And again, the challenge is you have to you write your story to your audience. So do you write multiple versions? Do you have a version that would appeal to the 20-somethings and a different version that appeals to the 40-something? Do you just do different headlines to try and engage them? Lots of tools, lots of options, lots of variety. And that's what makes just now such an exciting time. Again, another look at the platforms, and it's just worth considering these. And it's also interesting to remember that even though in the West and in Europe, we go Facebook, YouTube, Google, Twitter, but there's so many more platforms, especially Russia, the Far East, the Middle East. There's some great platforms that many people in the UK and nearby have never heard of. So it's worth considering that. Don't think, oh, I'm on Facebook, I'm on Twitter, I'm on LinkedIn, I'm on Instagram, my job's done. If you're reaching out to a Far Eastern audience, if you're reaching out to Russian audiences, there are platforms there worth considering. And again, this is just to show the change in active usage, and this is always going to be up and down, and it's natural. It's not like in days gone by, a newspaper spent a while getting to the top and then stayed at the top for 5 years at least. Now things shift a lot more quickly. So this shows, for example, that lots more people are signing up to Instagram. So that tells you that visual information is becoming more important. Facebook is down a little, but that's understandable as people do move away from that, especially in recent times. Usage of apps is also worth considering because you can see what people are spending their time on and how they're using it, and is there a news element to any of this? The Facebook app, if people are reading it on a small screen instead of a big screen, do you have to condense your news? Does it mean advertising isn't as worthwhile? lots of questions thrown up by the platforms that people use, because it's the platforms that define how the content appears. For example, look at YouTube there. Incredibly popular platform. I'm sure everyone listening to this knows what it is, especially so as you're probably watching it on YouTube. But the point is this, that YouTube has spawned thousands upon thousands of interactions, and has seen many different types of video online. The point to bear in mind is this: many people go online and try to copy the style of a news broadcast. They'll have perhaps a ticker tape at the bottom, some scrolling information down the side as well, and that's great on a 40-inch TV. It's not so good on a 4-inch phone when the text can't be read. So consider that if people are watching videos on YouTube, are they watching them more on mobile? Are they watching them on desktops? How does that change or alter the edit of your package? Do you just have straight video with no extra information, or do you continue to try and add in extra information where possible? And as I said at the start, to me, this is a golden time for journalism. There's never been so many tools and ways to tell stories. Equally, there's never been so many tools and ways to find stories. And even more so than that, unlike before, journalists now have the best opportunity ever to grow their own audience if they put the work in. I don't think it's actually part of the course material, but if someone wants, I'm quite happy to talk about the likes of Charlie Strauss, Warren Ellis, Mark Miller, authors who have gone online and through engagement, sometimes on a daily basis, sometimes on a weekly basis, have grown their audience 3, 5, 10-fold, and it's worked fantastically for them. Equally, journalists like Greg Palast have had great results by engaging online, and this applies to everyone in every field now. You can go online and find people that are interested in what you're writing about. You can engage with them, you can work with them, you can show your authority, show your relevance, and make that work for you, whether that be people coming to your website and buying things through your website, whether that be you then building an audience and driving it to your publications website so that your traffic is up. There's lots of great ways of doing this. And while it sounds a bit cynical to talk about monetizing your audience, it's something to bear in mind, because at the end of the day, journalism is in many ways just another business. It needs money to justify what it does, and if you can show to either advertisers or editors or publishers that you're bringing in considerable traffic, the thinking is that traffic then leads to increased sales, increased advertising revenue, and that's a winner. Studies 2 years ago, I keep forgetting we're in 2014 now, not 2013. A study in 2012 showed that in terms of advertising rates, one print reader is roughly the equivalent of 100 online readers in terms of considering purchasing, in terms of raising brand awareness, and that's something to bear in mind when we go forward and we talk about this idea of monetizing your work. But equally, the main reason I think this is a golden time for journalism is never before have journalists had the chance to reach so many, to tell the right tales, and bring about change for the better, improving lives, improving standards, improving society. I mean, this is what it comes down to. If you're the kind of journalist who just wants to write about straightforward things and just have people look at it and comment on it, that's fantastic. But in every field of journalism, every area of journalism right now, there's never been a better chance to raise awareness of things, to drive change, to consistently work on something and bring about improvement for the better. And that's why journalism in the digital age, it's not only a fantastic opportunity, it's a gift, it's a privilege, it's a responsibility. And over the coming weeks, hopefully this course will show you how you can use online to drive about change, to drive about the change and improvements in your work. If not saying that your work needs improved, but to drive change in how you promote the work, how it's written online, how it appears online, and what you can do to make sure that it has the maximum impact to reach the maximum audience. This is just summarising a couple of the sources used in this week's presentation, and as you'll see from the online course module, this week's assignment is fairly straightforward. It's just making sure that you're on the main platforms and sharing in the online forum those identities so that we can all look at them, we can all have an idea of what everyone's doing and then talk about it, and also be interconnected away from the lectures. As always, if you have any questions on this material, feel free to email me, feel free to drop me a note on Twitter, or equally leave a question in the course forums and I'll come back to you then. Thank you very much for listening, and we will pick this up next week with a development of these themes. Take care now.